Hey guys, before we jump full force into today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, I wanted to thank our sponsor, Growth Gathering. Growth Gathering is an online and in-person summit dedicated to helping you achieve your personal, financial, and overarching goals inside of your life. Inside Growth Gathering, you hear from the top industry leaders in real estate, financial success, and personal development. These leaders are encouraged to help you achieve your best life in whatever means and fashion that may look like. And the best part about it all, it's completely free. Guys, if you want to start tuning into Growth Gathering, it is every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Mountain Standard Time. Once again, you can come join us in person if you live here in the Utah area, or if you live outside of Utah in a different state where you just don't like being that social and coming to events. Don't worry, everything is hosted on Zoom as well. Once again, this is 100% free. If you guys want to tune into Growth Gathering, in the description of today's episode, you'll be able to find a link to the website as well as where you can come in person or get access via Zoom. Guys, thank you so much for listening to today's episode, and thank you for Growth Gathering for sponsoring. What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, a podcast dedicated to helping you lead your best life and hearing from the people who are doing it themselves. If you guys are watching on today's episode of the Get Over Yourself podcast, as you can see right next to me, I got Michael Lanctot with me. Michael, me and him work for the same company. We have been for a couple of years now. And just recently, he introduced at Growth Gathering a very interesting concept of how you guys can start making some passive income and start almost your own little side business. And it's through Turo. So in today's episode, we're going to be diving all about Turo, what it is, how you guys can start making money on it, why it's actually pretty simple when it comes to the side hustle, the side business realm, and how you guys can get going on it. But with all that being said, let's jump into today's episode.
Heck yeah. No, I'm super excited. Turo was really my first major passive income type of investment, right? So I did like vending machines and I did other stuff like that, and invested in little startups here and there. But Turo was really where I was like, I can make some good money.
Dude, vending machines, I have a buddy who does that. It can make decent money, but it is such a hassle.
Super annoying.
Have to restock every couple, I think he does his every week, but sometimes every 2 weeks,
Yeah. So
drive to the location.
You try finding someone else to do it, and then they eat all the snacks,
Not even eat all the snacks, but the profits too. It's not like you're making a ton on it.
It's not. And so that's why I was like, it was like a cool little first start when I was I think I was 22 years old or something, okay. 21. So it started out, I started out at a different pest control company, did 2 years there. Left, went to a different pest control company, and I was there for 2 years. And at that time, I was just kind of annoyed with, my bank account would just go lower and lower and lower. It's like you'd make a bunch during the summer, and then it'd go lower, And so I had a Supra my second summer, and I don't advise people to get like a Supra car like that for your first Turo car. But I had a Supra, and it was just kind of chilling there. And then one of the guys was like, "Dude, you should just throw that up on Turo." I was like, "What the hell's Turo?" And then I threw it up, and it pulled in like $1,200-$1,500 the first month. And I was like, "Oh, that's pretty sick."
You're like, "That was a good idea."
Yeah, I was like, "This is great. I'm gonna buy a ton more cars." And so I watched a bunch of videos on YouTube. I watched a bunch of stuff, and I got knowledgeable about it, insurance and different stuff like that. But there were still so many learning curves that it took me through on deals of like what kind of cars to get or what not to get. And so I went, my kind of passive income journey went like this. I had those vending machines that were getting me like $200 a month. I bought a 5-plex, a duplex, and a single family home, and 13 Turo cars within 6 months.
Holy cow.
So it's like I was like, I'm going all in. And so within 6 months, I created a 6-figure income with the different investments. And at that point, I was like, I'm done. I'm not knocking doors. I'm not recruiting. And I stopped pest control and just door to door for a little bit, honestly. And I just kind of took care of those and got them scalable and profitable, and just kept getting more cars and kept growing it, And so it went good. It went really good. And I started in Albuquerque. That's where I'm from. That's where I had almost all my cars. And I started opening up new locations in different cities: San Antonio, St. Louis. I started in Phoenix, went to Las Vegas, and I was kind of blowing that up quite a bit.
And so let's take a step back for a second. You started, you were kind of side hustle guy for a while there in your early 20s. You're trying to figure out, I feel like that's a lot of things. Like, people who listen to the show, especially all the dudes who listen, are very similar on that mindset. Yeah. Like, let me go do something. I want to try and figure out how I can make passive income. I want to figure out how I can kind of like do something with my life that's exciting. Yep. So you started that, vending machines, so okay, whatever. And then your buddy suggests this Turo thing. And for anyone in the audience who doesn't know what Turo is, you want to give that a brief description?
Yeah, it's just a car renting platform, right? It's Airbnb. Think about Airbnbs for cars. You got your car, someone can come, short-term car rental. It can be long-term, but primarily short-term car rental. You got your Kia Sentra sitting there. Someone can come pick it up for a couple days, and you make X amount of money from that.
And why is that different from like Hertz or like any other like airport car rental?
Well, it's nice for customers because they can pick out a car, right? Have you ever rented a car from Hertz or somewhere?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, you will get a mid-sized car. And
you can kind of like choose a little bit of the specifics, but you can't choose like exactly.
Exactly. And then you get there and they're like, oh, actually, I know you made a reservation. All of our mid-sized are gone. Here's a Chevy Spark. And you're like, no, I don't want a Chevy
And you're paying
Spark.
$300 a day.
Yeah. You're like, I don't want a Chevy Spark. They're like, okay, here's a minivan. You're like, no, I don't want a freaking minivan. I wanted the car I rented. So it's nice for a lot of people because it's like they can scroll through and you can't rent a Lamborghini at Hertz, but you could on Turo, right? Or you could go rent a Supra, or you could go rent and you could pick the car, or Jeep, or you could go pick the exact car that you want. So that's why it's nice for a lot of people. It doesn't necessarily save a lot of people money. But a lot of the time when those car rental places get backed up, right, you don't know if they're backed up or not because they don't know if they're going to be backed up. If they have 5 people not return their car on time, they're not going to have a car for you, right? So that's why that's another nice reason for Turo for customers is they can just get on the app. They can be like, oh, this car is like 2 miles away. I'm just going to go pick this up real quick.
Yeah. And so you started that. You listed your Supra in the beginning, right?
Yep.
You made that good money. And then how many cars did you say you bought within like a year of that?
I bought 13 within 6 months. So
13 within 6 months.
And I got the properties and I got the cars and I was like, all right, let's go. And the big reason was because when I left my first company, there's what they said, there's what I said. Anyways, they ended up suing me and I filed bankruptcy when I was 22, 23. So I didn't get a lot of properties early on. I didn't get a lot of stuff like that because I had this bankruptcy and this terrible credit, right? So getting loans was pretty difficult. And so my investments had to be cash. And I didn't know what kind of cash investments I could get, right? And so I did some different things. Like I had a business and I would W-2 my wife so she could get loans. That's how we got the super loan, for example. And we could do some stuff like that, and we got a little bit tricky. But for the most part, it was like, I was cash heavy and didn't have credit ability.
And so you had all this cash and you start saying, okay, where can I go to sort of use that? You can't necessarily buy a home unless you're giving the entire amount in cash. But what can you do? Use cars.
Yeah, exactly.
And were all these 13 cars used? Were they brand new? Like
all used. All used. Yeah. So I was buying a wide variety. I bought some good investments, some bad investments. So for example, a bad investment was I bought this one car. It looked sick. It was like a Toyota, not a Toyota 86. It was a Scion FRS. Cool looking car, but it was thick, right? And then, so what I didn't think about at the time, I was like, man, people are going to want to rent this. It looks pretty cool, but it's kind of clunky. It didn't rent out super well. Turo has a setting where only people who turn on the stick shift setting can see the cars. Anyways, then I traded that car for a Jeep. And I was like, a Jeep will rent out really well.
What kind of Jeep?
Jeep Wrangler.
Okay.
4-door. It was awesome. Giant tires on it, and it rented out well. Jeeps break down all the freaking time. And so I was probably like $5,000 to $8,000 negative on that Jeep, which was, is what it is. It was a learning experience. When I got Jeeps later on, I just got them with way less miles because that Jeep I got at like 120,000 miles. And so Jeeps at like 40 or 50, a lot better. And here's the other thing. Why do people get Jeeps?
To go off-roading and go crazy with them, right?
Exactly. Even though you can put it in your description 20 times not to do it, they're still going to do it. So just having like kind of an idea of, okay, what are these guys going to be doing with my car? If you rent a Supra, what are you guys going to be doing with your Supra?
Going to be going quick,
They're
right?
going to be going quick. They're going to, so I kind of came up with this like pyramid of cars that I would advise people to get. And you got like your base cars at the bottom of like what you should get. And these are your cheap cash cars. People will always need these cheap cash cars.
Let's hear some examples.
Right. You get like a $5,000 Chevy Impala, right? And you get a $7,000 Ford Focus, or you get these cars, right? And so they're cheap and they're garbage, but they're going to run. At least for a year or so.
Right.
So you got these cheap cars and you're listing them for $29 a day, $34 a day. Not much, right?
Just something to get somebody from point A to point B. They don't care about the flash, anything crazy. They just got to get there.
Yep. And then you've got your next level up, and this is where you got a little bit nicer cars, maybe your $15,000 cars. You got a Toyota Camry or a Prius, or you got a Honda Civic, something like that, right? A little bit nicer economy cars. And then a step up from there, you start getting your low-end sports cars and your luxury cars, and then on the high end, you start getting like your Mercedes, your Mercedes G-Wagons, and you start getting your Lamborghinis, and you start getting those high-end cars at the top of the pyramid. Now, here's the deal. When the economy goes bad, which cars do you think stop renting out first?
Probably the more expensive ones.
Exactly, right. So that top of the pyramid, and you probably don't own that car outright. So it's not only is it stopping to rent, you've got a $2,000-$3,000 a month payment you've got to be making, and the insurance and all this stuff. So when people, I'm not saying don't do those. Like I've got a lot of nice cars that I'd rented on Turo, and a lot of them killed it. But unless if you have these cheap cash cars that can support you, you could really, really screw yourself. And a lot of people have done that in Turo. Is they'll go really heavy because it's going great, and then all of a sudden the rush stopped and they're not renting out as well, and they've got all these car payments and something happened and it sucks. Or let's say your car gets in a crash. It takes the insurance a couple of months to pay you out. Every single one of those months, you have to be making that payment still without that income coming in.
Definitely.
And so it's like people, that's why I always say start with those cheap cash cars because they can't take money out of your pocket.
Especially if you're buying for $5,000 cash or something, right?
They could break down. You don't have to fix it right away, right? But for those other ones, they can actively be taking money out of your pocket.
Definitely. And give us some sort of idea. So I like this pyramid example, right?
Yeah.
It's very easy to picture inside of our heads, especially for everyone who doesn't watch the podcast but just listens.
Yeah.
You have this base layer, your basic, what do we got? Like Chevy Sparks.
Cheap cars like under $7,000.
Under $7,000, right? You buy all these. How much, say you're renting it out for what, between $30 to $40 a day? Does that sound somewhat realistic?
Yeah, man. Think about this. Here, let me pull out my calculator. Think about some quick math for you. This is why it can be freaking awesome. Is because if you buy some car for $5,000, right? Awesome. You need to get that money back. And then maybe with buying your tracker and buying your other stuff and registering it, maybe you're out like $5,500.
Right.
Okay. If you're renting that car out for $33 a day, Turo has different level insurance plans. So you have to have insurance on the car while it's just parked and just chilling. But when it's on a trip, that's not on your insurance. That's on Turo's insurance. And they've got different plans. So let's say I pick their 90% plan where I get to keep 90%. So I'm making $29.7 a day that it's rented out. So if I can rent that out for 22 days a month, that's pulling in $653 in a year. That's $7,800.
So within the year, you've already cash flowed.
I've already got my whole investment back. Exactly.
And how realistic? Take me through, because you said you've had cars in Albuquerque, Utah, Phoenix, St. Louis. You have cars all over. We're in Utah right now, right?
Yeah.
I went on Turo literally just for this conversation today. Yeah. I was very curious. There's a lot of cars listed on there.
Yeah, because you got a lot of hustlers in Utah.
You do.
Yeah,
and so how that 22 days, is that realistic? Or?
Not in Utah. I do not recommend people to rent cars in Utah. Not only is it not realistic because there's a lot of hustlers, it's not realistic because you think about the geography of Utah. You got a mountain, you got the valley where everybody lives, and you got a lake. So if you took like 100 square mile or, 25 square mile, right, of as far as Utah goes, you're going to have all this space with no population density, and in the middle, you've got where everybody lives.
Yep.
If you go to Dallas, it's like a square. You go to Albuquerque, it's a square. You go to Vegas, it's like a square. So the population density is way higher for that 25-mile radius. So what that really means is guests, instead of having to drive 30, 45, 50 minutes to get a car, if they were in a different city, would only have to drive 10 for the same population density. So that's the other reason Turo's not super great, is because if someone flies into the airport, but you live 45 minutes away from the airport because it's a valley, what are the odds that person wants to Uber 45 minutes to go?
Kind of ruins the entire purpose. Right?
Yeah, and then it's like, okay, well, maybe I'll set something up where the cars are closer to the airport. Maybe I'll drive them. Maybe I'll do this, and then it just becomes a job.
Yeah. And have you ever tried like having somebody do that for you, paying somebody to go drop them off at the airport, or said like, hey, if you pay me $20 extra, I'll go drop it off? And Well, how does it feel at that point?
Well, to have someone be able to do that, because you can't have a setting like optional airport. It's like you have to have an airport pickup.
Gotcha.
You have to have someone, their full-time job is taking care of your cars. You're going to need 20 or 30 cars in one location to justify that.
Yeah, because that becomes their full-time job, and that means a lot of money out of your pocket.
Exactly.
So what's been the best market in your opinion? It sounds like Vegas. It sounds like you like Vegas a lot.
Vegas was okay. You would think that in Vegas, you'd get a lot of people. And this was my initial thought. Man, Vegas, I'm going to put my Supras there. I'm going to put my nice cars there.
Yeah, because people want to be flashy in Vegas, right?
So, yes, which is true, but I was so wrong because there's so many nice car dealerships in Vegas that will rent you an Audi R8 for $120. So in St. Louis, I was renting the Supra for $120 a day, which was awesome. In Vegas, it was renting for $70.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
Big price drop.
Exactly. And so that's when I was like, oh shoot, that's not a good move. So in Vegas, I've got cars there, and they're mainly just cheap cash cars and economy cars. So those are the ones that do pretty good there. People fly in, they don't have the budget for a super nice car.
They're gonna go waste it all in the casino, right?
Exactly. So yeah, that was a little bit of a eye opener because I was like, why is this car's not renting out? And then I was in Vegas and I was like, oh, I can rent an Audi R8 for $98 a day. That's why my cars are not renting. And then I moved them out pretty quick after that.
So dude, you're here in Utah.
Yep.
You have all these cars in all the different states and whatnot.
Oh yeah.
Who manages it? What's the payment look like for them?
Yeah, I found different managers, and I would give some of them commission, and then I would give some of them, it would just depend. Some of them wanted a commission, some of them just wanted a flat rate amount. And so actually recently, 3 weeks ago now, I sold all of my Turo cars, or maybe a month ago now, almost all of them. And I had 30 on there, and then I leased out about 12 of them to different people who needed cars, like my Supras and stuff like that. And then the other 18 I just sold because Turo cannot be 100% passive. It can't, because the cars are registered to you. It's like you could try to get it really close there, but at the end of the day, like in Albuquerque, where the tipping point was I probably had 6 cars stolen there this year. It's just a pain in the butt. So it's like, man, I got to go take care of that real quick. And now I'm not doing my interviews, and now I'm not doing all this stuff for Hawks and for my businesses that need the time in, that my ROI is higher. So it's like I was clearing $15,000 profit a month, which was, great. But what was it taking away every time one of those emergencies happened? And I had managers. I had an online manager. I had area managers. I had all that stuff set up. But like Airbnb, I'll just get checks every month, and I don't have to worry about it at all. And my management company takes care of it perfectly. Turo is just not as easy to do.
Not quite yet.
Yeah, exactly.
Somebody's got to come in there and fix it a little.
Oh yeah, I don't even know if it's possible to because it's like when your car gets in a wreck or when your car gets stolen or something like that, you kind of want to be a little bit hands on, and that's the kind of the problem with that.
So let's address that as well. You mentioned when you're talking about putting cash down for one of those cheap cars, you mentioned okay, maybe $5,000 for the car, and then $500 goes to like a tracker and a couple other little things. Are we putting air tags in the car? What are we doing? Like how we knowing where our cars are? Because people will steal them.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things you can do. Air tags obviously are nice because they're cheap, but they make that noise, right? So in my course, I kind of go over what kind of trackers to use and kind of, if you do use air tags, what to do with them so people can't find them as easy. But yeah, I mean, I've recovered every single one of my cars that was stolen, right? Some of them were trashed and some of them were like absolutely not usable after, but a good chunk of them I recovered pretty quick.
And what happens to, because dude, like at the end of the day, like you said, you might be making a lot of money, even if you just have one car on Turo, and you're making say $400 a month on the car, $300 a month, depending on which kind of car it is, right?
Yep.
What happens when somebody does trash it? Does Turo have any kind of like protection on that?
They've got their insurance on there.
Okay.
Right. So they've got their insurance. So here's one of my biggest things is I always tell people, you need to buy a deal. The most important thing on Turo is finding a deal. And on making sure the car can rent, obviously, right? Like, you have to have it under 130,000 miles when you buy it and get it registered and set up on Turo. Yeah, there's a lot of different steps.
Can't be older than 10 years old or something.
Can't be older than 10 years old. Can't be a lemon or rebuilt or salvage. It's got to be clean. And so on my course, I have a course. It's called Fleet and Go. And I walk people through how to find cars, what good deals are. I walk them through step by step on it. what I would do if I was just going out and starting Turo and how to do it the right way so you're not losing money. Anyway, so I'm very big on finding a deal. Most important thing. Because here's the thing. You don't 100% know if this car is going to have problems. You don't know if it's going to rent out well. You don't know anything. And you can move at markets and you can do stuff like that. But if you got it on a deal, you could go trade it in and get just as much money as you paid for it and get a decent car, right? And so for me, that's the most important thing, is because I've had a lot of cars that got totaled or stolen, and I got more money from the insurance than I paid for them, a lot more. And
so it ends up working out in your favor for the most part.
If you do it that way, if you go and buy a car because you're like, man, this car is going to be awesome. Like, I'm going to get, tons of people wanting to rent this kind of car from me. And if you get really fixated on a type of car, what happens is that you start making bad decisions. You're not looking for a deal. You get more bought into an idea more than anything else. So for me, what I'm doing is I'm going to go and I'm going to make sure I'm getting that kind of a deal that's going to make it that if it does get stolen or something, I got to pay out. For example, I had this Mazda, and I bought it for like $4,000
off Facebook, or
off Facebook Marketplace. Okay. And had a terrible, the bumper wasn't the same color. It was a garbage car. Anyways, I rented for I want to say a year and a half, 2 years, and it brought me in like $8,000 or $9,000, and then it got totaled, and then the insurance company gave me like $7,200. Now I had to put some money into that Mazda, replacing the brake pads, replacing some other stuff, and doing some stuff in there. So total in on the car was probably $6,000, but that's pretty good ROI.
Oh, definitely. Between the time rented out and the insurance, it's not a bad gig at all.
Yeah, but then you also got your losers. Like, I had this Audi. Now, this is the time that I broke my own rule. I wasn't as worried about the deal, and I was like, oh, man, this car is so nice. It'll rent out really well. Engine blew up, and that's probably been my biggest loss on Turo, and it was about $13,000, $14,000.
Wow.
So that kind of sucked. So it's not even a loss yet, because now I rent it out. I lease it out to someone who's going to take care of it. So I'm trying to recuperate some of that negative that I've got. So that story is not ended with that car, right? Like, I replaced the engine and it's out there still, but it's definitely going to have a lower ROI than a lot of the cars.
Definitely. And so walk me through, because like I said, I was trying to prepare for this podcast today. And so I was trying to think, based off what I heard a couple weeks ago, what is some of your process into looking for a car on Facebook Marketplace? Obviously, you can go through and you can go work with the dealerships and you can get crazy good ones.
I look for a deal. That's it. That's the only thing I look for. I open up the most recent searches, scroll through, and I try to snag deals early on, and I try to negotiate them down further, and I try to get a deal. That's the only thing I care about.
Okay.
Yeah.
And deals obviously depend per car and whatnot.
Yeah, so I've got Kelly Blue Book open, and I'm buying those cars in trade-in.
Okay.
Yeah, and as long as I get it in trade-in, I can't lose. Like, I had this Nissan something. I've never had good luck with Nissans. I would not buy Nissans. And I had this Nissan whatever, and this car was like a total lemon. Like, it drove for like a month, and then it was having problem after problem, but it was a really good deal. So then when I was going and buying my Lexus LC500, I went and dumped a couple of my garbage cars on these guys, and they traded the trade-in value they gave me was more than I paid for the cars. And they're selling me, like $100,000 car. They weren't checking if this Nissan was in prime condition or whatever. They were just like, oh yeah, we'll give you this, and I was like, okay. And so I definitely would use those trade-ins to my advantage. I'd go buy, like, when I was buying a nicer car, I would unload some of the crap. And they got cheap mechanics. They can fix it up a lot easier than you can.
Definitely. Yeah. And that's the thing. I guess for anyone who's trying to kind of do this on their own time, start this kind of side hustle, you know a lot about cars. Is that because you always grew up liking them, or is it this is just kind of comes with the trade?
This is crazy. I know nothing about cars at all. I think I've changed brakes on my car once. I didn't even know what V6 really meant when I was getting cars. I know nothing about cars. I like cars that look nice, but it doesn't mean anything.
If it goes fast, you like it. If it doesn't chop, you like it.
Yeah. If it looks nice and it feels good, I like it. I know nothing about cars. I just know about deals. And so I was like, I know how I can make sure I'm getting a deal, but I didn't know if a car was going to run or not. And sometimes I'd have to have mechanics come out with me and check them. But usually I just was like, getting it on a good enough deal. Worst case scenario, I'm still good.
Yeah, that's perfect. Well, Michael, if you could break it down, this has been a super insightful episode. I feel like it's something everyone could do. Because if you have anyone could go work whatever job, save up a couple grand, and go start making some passive income. Yep. This is one of those side hustles where you can get going within the year. Guys, we only got a couple months left until December, or I guess until January 1st, right? So make that your goal. If you're interested in anything you heard today, Michael also, in the description of today's episode, he'll be including his entire course where you guys can find it and how you guys can get even more insights on what cars to look for, how exactly you should put your trackers inside the car, everything we've talked about today, but in so much more depth. Yeah. So if you're interested, make sure to look in the description because it'll all be there. But just to kind of close out today's episode, if you were starting brand fresh and you said, like, I'm on day one of Turo, having all the knowledge you do now, if you could walk us through like a 2-minute explanation of what you think you would do and where you would
First thing I would do is I'd set up my business. I'd set up my LLC. I'd set all that stuff up. Next thing I would do is I would start looking for deals. And then as soon as I find a deal, I'd go and list it right away. I would list cars sometimes. I'm probably not supposed to do this, but I would list cars before I even bought them. It's instead of paying for Carfax to make sure it was listable, I would do it on Turo, right? Because it'll tell me if it's listable or not. So then I would do that. So I'd get my LLC set up. I'd get all my stuff on. I've got an Amazon shopping cart, right? Pre-built with all the trackers I use, the cleaning kit, the vacuum, all that. So I would just order that, get my business set up. I'd get my first car and I'd just get it listed within a day. There's going to be a deal somewhere. So I'd go find my deal and here's the thing. If there wasn't a deal, I would not buy a car. Don't buy a car if it's not a deal. That's the biggest thing. You overspending $2,000, you think about that. It's going to take you a few months to get that money back. You would have found a deal in a few months. You would have found a deal a week, 2-3 weeks later. So you're losing a lot of money by not getting a deal. So get a deal, learn how to get a deal, and that's what I would do. It breaks it pretty simple. In my course, so I'll send you. I've got a website and I've got a free 10-step video course video on there, and it just talks step by step, 10 steps what you should do. Okay. And then if you're like really wanting to get into Turo, then yeah, go onto the course that I've got. I sell it on there. I've got it super well priced, and it walks you through everything, and it includes like a one-on-one coaching session. So after you set your business up, I'll go and look at it, and I'd say, hey, I tweak this, hey, I do this, hey, I do this, and I'll kind of just help you refine your system.
Perfect. Well, you guys heard it. Hit the description links down below if you guys want to have a private conversation with Michael here. Or if you guys are just interested in that 10-step process on the website, I'll go ahead and link that as well. Michael, thank you for joining us on the Get Over Yourself podcast, man.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. It's been great.
And guys, thank you so much for listening as well. As always, I would appreciate it. If you know somebody who would benefit from hearing today's conversation, it's how I continue to grow the podcast. The best marketing is always you guys, finding your friends, family, anyone you think who would enjoy it. Please do me a favor and send it on over to them. Likewise, if you guys enjoyed today's episode, make sure to give us a positive rating down below. Leave us some stars on Spotify, on Apple, on Google Podcasts, wherever you're listening today. And just remember, it'll all be okay. Just take a step back and start listing some cars on Turo.